Hello and welcome back to this downful idealistic crusade. This video is the next in my never-ending series of Laserdisc Collection update videos, but this is yet another mystery box sent to me by the wonderful Jason Koestner, who decided to just gift me with some more amazing mystery box titles. So these were all completely unexpected and as with the last couple boxes he sent me, full of some really interesting items I've always wanted to find on LD, in particular pressings and things, and then some really impressive, very difficult to find releases that I'm amazed he was so kind enough to just send my way. First is the original 1983 Japanese evergreen pressing of Superman the movie, complete with the original Obi strip. This is the same sort of jacket design, and I believe the same master as our first US pan and scan Laserdisc release that we got around the same time. I've always never thought I needed to pick up any of the pan and scans, but now I've gotten into comparing more of the minutiae of the Superman transfers, in particular in regards to the audio tracks. I've been trying to find a clean, non-super expensive US pressing because for some reason that disc, simply because it's Superman, gets overpriced. But Jason very kindly sent me the Japanese version, which has a much nicer and thicker cardstock in terms of the jacket is a lot nicer. It's got better printing, and like most Japanese releases, the actual colors used are very bold in terms of the print quality. However, we do get a gatefold, and forgive the Obi being on here because when you deal with Obis that are getting on up there in age, a lot of times if you try to remove them, you may actually wind up tearing them because a lot of these are still on the jacket. But I think I can manage to get this slid down enough. But this has the absolutely gorgeous gatefold of the climax, or the moment in the climax when Superman stops the train crash, and it's used for the whole gatefold, beautifully printed, and looks absolutely stunning. Now, obviously, being from 1983, this is not the version you'll want to watch for full enjoyment factor. And of course, it's also pan and scanned, and this is not how you want to see this film. However, for 1983, it's actually relatively impressive that they could get this whole film on a disc and have it look up to this level of quality at this time, which is still pretty early for mass Laserdisc releases. Now, it does only carry an analog soundtrack, though, and I have my suspicions, and they were correct. This carries what is credited as stereo and does seem to indeed be the original 1978 Dolby Stereo mix of the film, which is notoriously very wimpy and has next to no, if any, surround activity. So if you've ever wondered if the original releases did have the 78 Dolby Stereo that is super wimpy, they do. So this does seem to be pretty much the rough equivalent of what we got here in the US. So this is a release you might want to pick up more for completion's sake, or if you're curious to see how film transfer started out on disc, or to see what Superman the movie looked like in 1983 in regards to home video. But this is still a wonderful piece of the Superman video history. Next, he sent me a standard Warner copy that I've been wanting to get for a while. I kind of hemmed and hawed about it for a while because there are a number of transfer issues or reasons why this isn't necessarily the best way to see the film. However, then I decided I really wanted to get a copy, and once you decide that, all of the cheap, affordable, good copies have dried up, and all you find are beat up or overpriced, or beat up and overpriced versions of the Laserdisc edition that you first thought you didn't need. So he sent me the Warner release of Bullet from 1988 with a version of the original one-sheet artwork, really nice thick gloss on the jacket, and of course the classic silver Warner bar on the side. Eventually they would repress this as a full jacket without the silver bar, but those copies seem a bit more limited. Unfortunately, it is the same exact disc in either jacket, and the reason why I say unfortunately, not only is this not widescreen, it is a opened up presentation in with the 1:3 ratio, so this is technically more of an open matted transfer because it was a 1:8:5 spherical film. This film has always been, for 99% of its life on home video, remixed or reprocessed. This was actually reprocessed for stereo very early on, along with the first Dirty Harry film. And after the very, very first initial VHS and beta release of both films, which had their mono mixes, it was quickly reprocessed into fake stereo, and that lasted until they got revisits in the DVD era, and it would just get recycled over and over. So what you're actually getting here is, as you can see, the reprocessed for stereo track. Warner would do this on some films for whatever reason, and then they just carried over and over. So it's still got good fidelity. It still sounds okay, but it's not technically the original mix. And outside of the very initial tape releases, we've never gotten it again. And then if it's been remixed, it's been upmixed further from the reprocessed stereo track. So if the rumors are true of, unfortunately, a Bullet remake, and Warner decides to do a UHD release, hopefully that would mean we might finally get the original mono mix properly restored and presented on disc. But don't hold your breath, because this film's had a lot of issues over the years that Warner has never addressed. So I'm very curious now to finally look at the opened up transfer here and to listen to the reprocessed stereo mix again, but here on the Laserdisc release, and see how it compares to the later special edition remix that was done for the 2005 DVD first, and then ported over to the rather unimpressive Blu-ray that was just basically a port of that. So this is still a beautiful image, one of the great hanging on your wall poster images, and Warner did at least give us a nice gloss on the jacket. So this is just one I'd been meaning to get a good copy of for way too long. So this was just literally reading my wish list in terms of being on the same wavelength. He also sent me an upgrade for a copy I have that is... It's in okay shape, but the jacket's definitely a little beat. But he also sent me the AC3 reissue of Aliens. Apologize for the glare. This is a really nice jacket. It seems simple at first, but it's got a very thick gloss on it, and it actually has what looks like the alien queen in there. I'll try and get some clear images so you can kind of see, but it's hard to pick up on camera, but she's definitely in there, and it's a really nice visual effect, because it first just looks like a black cover. And they also gave this a really lovely, striking gatefold with beautiful imagery, full color, really beautifully printed, and again, the thick gloss of the jacket extends into the gatefold. So this is a nice display piece just for the jacket. Then we have the rear. And this is not the full-blown special edition cut. This is actually a reissue of the theatrical version. So this gives the theatrical cut a widescreen release on Laserdisc with a spiffed-up new master, and it adds AC3 as well. So this is basically an AC3 reissue of the theatrical cut. And while most people prefer the special edition version, it's nice that we did get one more go-round and an AC3 version on LD. Probably it would have been more helpful if it had been the special edition version, like how The Abyss got a 5.1 reissue of the longer cut as a standard 2-disc version instead of the box set version. That's sort of the same paradigm that this release is taking, except they just went with the theatrical cut instead of the special edition version. The AC3 is a really bombastic, fun time. It's basically an upmix of the original Dolby Stereo SR, which is still here on the PCM digital track, so you get to choose between both, should you wish. And if that weren't enough, this disc is pretty well known within the community of Laserdisc fans. This has a ridiculously good transfer on it, so this is one of those discs that you can pick up and use to sort of look at your setup and see what happens when a rather good disc pops up on it. I haven't spun it in a while, but I'm definitely going to revisit this particular pressing now that I have this much nicer condition copy to look at. So, but yeah, this is one of those that's very surprising how good it still looks. So this is an easy pick up if you stumble across one. Also, it does have significantly better picture quality than the box set, so it's also better looking than the special edition box set, and you don't have to deal with the potential rot problems of that box set, which did have many issues with having rotted discs. So Really, the only downside, if you prefer the special edition extended cut, that's the downside, that the much spiffier AC3 pressing with the newer and better master is unfortunately just the theatrical version. And then for the last of the standard discs in terms of non-box sets is a release that's certainly not standard, and this is something I never thought I'd actually come across. This is one of the very difficult to find Warner home video titles that was also reissued as a promo disc for early Toshiba 16:9 televisions. So he very, very graciously sent me the squeeze version of Unforgiven. Now, this looks identical to the standard US jacket, and it pretty much is, which makes these all the harder to spot. And the rear is also pretty much identical. The difference here, of course, is this is one of the promotional pressings. Now, Warner did this again for Toshiba televisions as a sort of tie-in. They put out several titles that were big sellers for them at the time on Laserdisc as these custom 16:9 squeeze anamorphic discs. So this is essentially just like the squeeze discs that were released in the Japanese market. However, these are really the only squeeze feature film titles released on Laserdisc here in the US, and they were only done as promotional items. They were only available in these very limited special order quantities, essentially, and they were only for select titles. You have Unforgiven, The Fugitive, Free Willy, and I believe Grumpy Old Men is the other one. And the only way you're able to ascertain that this is one of these special pressings is tucked away on the rear cover somewhere. You're going to find a little tiny mention, and here it is for Unforgiven, about how these are meant to be in the anamorphically squeezed format to be compatible with your new Toshiba 16:9 television. These are promo disc and not intended for resale. So that means that if you were to watch this disc on a 16:9 modern display, you are actually going to get a 16:9 image, because that's how the disc was mastered. So this is essentially, in the realm of squeeze laserdiscs, it's like what we saw happen a number of years later with anamorphically enhanced DVDs, just in the analog realm with the Laserdisc format. So this is yet once again a particular thing that Laserdisc did first that DVD later picked up and did its own version of. So this is another example of Laserdisc essentially being the father of a lot of elements you see on DVD, even down to anamorphic enhancement. So, needless to say, these couple of Warner titles that are squeeze discs are very, very rare and very highly prized. And when they do pop up, they usually go for quite a bit because people know what they have. And so, if you're like me, you've checked every single copy of this film you've ever found in a bin. And since it's a very common film, that means a lot. So recently, I finally found the squeeze copy of The Fugitive after many years of checking copies. So Jason very kindly sent me his squeeze of Unforgiven. And what's also great about this, like The Fugitive as well, because the original discs are rotters, very significant rotters. In fact, The Fugitive is one of the worst rotters I've ever seen. Unforgiven isn't quite as bad overall in terms of the rot report, but the standard pressing does get laser rot. That makes finding these squeeze pressings all the more important, because the squeeze pressings have zero rot problems. They were not pressed at the same plant, and they were done by better manufacturers. So you don't have to worry about the rot issue. So basically, it's, as far as I'm able to tell, they did do these special anamorphic 16:9 runs of the same picture master for the selected films, and only sold them as these separate promo pieces, and thus they were printed and pressed at a different plant, so you don't have the rot problems, and you have a 16:9 image of a common disc that's also a super rotter. So that's why these are so highly prized, and why now I can't believe that I actually have two of them. So two down, two to go. But this was incredible to pull out of this box. But not to be outdone, he also sent me some Japanese box sets, and the first is one of the I think this is Japan exclusive, but one of their big lovely packages for a then current TV show. So he sent me the first box of the American Gothic series, which is a show I've never seen, but I have read a little bit about it. This was produced and was really shepherded by Sam Raimi, and as far as I can understand it, is basically a horror show with some sort of maybe elements of fantasy and science fiction sort of dabbled in throughout. But this is a really nice, hefty, impressive box. But instead of being labeled season or volume, it's literally labeled Fear Number 1. So I thought that was a nice sort of cheeky touch. But the imagery and the printing, as always, on these big, massive Japanese TV boxes is wonderful. The title's actually embossed. The insert is ridiculously impressive because you have all these blood splotches on what looks like perhaps snow, but all of this is fully textured. I don't know how well this will come across, but it's fully textured, and so is the blood spatter, and the title is specially printed once again. It's just a ridiculously detailed booklet. And then we flip it open to find the credits, interviews, all kinds of images and things, and a full chapter breakdown for all of the episodes. Plus, we get even a family tree. Of course, this being Japanese, the only problem for those of us in the US, all the writing and text is, of course, in Japanese. Then we flip to the back, which also has the rest of the episode credits. Now, this set does seem to comprise the first 12 episodes, so I'll be able to get a full taste of what this show was actually like. And we also get really nice custom jackets for each disc. There are 6 discs, 12 episodes, so each disc has 2 episodes on it. And as if the packaging was already not impressive enough, you flip over the jacket and get a completely different, unique image for the other episode. And then we also even get the little mail-away card that was originally in here. But that's not it for box sets, because he also amazingly sent me the Japanese Dirty Harry box set. This is the unique Japanese hardcase box that was released in 1995, and this is what they got in Japan versus our US Dirty Harry collection, which I have and have gone over in some of my other videos. So this does seem to be based on those same letterbox or overall letterbox presentations, because of course the final film, The Deadpool, was never letterboxed by Warner on Laserdisc. But it seems to follow that same pattern of new widescreen masters for the initial films, and then also new Dolby Surround tracks for most of the films as well, based on their original monomix presentations, but with stereo score inserted. This has a really interesting sort of pyramid or triangle design. It's quite effective. It looks quite nice. And then we get custom spine, which looks really impressive on a shelf. And then the rear has this really ominous, lovingly printed image. I love the design of this. And they even made sure to try and make the Japanese text on the bottom in terms of the text specs a little less obvious, as to not detract from the image. And of course, this does kind of make it look like a slasher film box set or something, but it's just really well done and is very striking. The US box, while I like the design, it's also a little weird in terms of having just a little Clint Eastwood head on the front, and the rest is just plain black. So this is definitely somebody put some more time into the design of this. And also, it's one of the Japanese boxes where it's a hard case and the side is exposed, so you can just easily pull out which disc you want at the time. So we have this whole side open to simply house the jackets inside. We did get a nice set exclusive booklet, which has nice imagery and is laid out well. It's stapled, so it's not a big fold out. So it's honestly a little nicer, so that way it's not flopping around everywhere. But this gives you the credit and general information for all of the films. Of course, this being a Japanese box set, all of the text is in Japanese. And then we get some actual nice color imagery in this section entitled All About Dirty Harry. And then, as a lot of Japanese sets would nicely do, we get an entire section about the main cast and crew, but amusingly they just labeled it the staff and cast section of the Dirty Harry films. And then we get this really nice collage with the title. I like what they did here. It's really well done. of images from all the films. Then we come to the actual jackets, and they went for a really nice uniform design for all of these. Now, unfortunately, these are not in color; they're in black and white. But I think once you see them, you'll immediately get what they were going for, and it's quite effective actually. So for the original film, we have this custom Japanese jacket with imagery and the Dirty Harry title in large font. And this is the sort of design they went with for all the jackets, but then did a custom image and setup for each film. The rear is also in black and white, and as I said before, this is a single disc and it is widescreen and it has stereo, so it does seem to be a Japanese repressing of the US widescreen Laserdisc Master that we got here in both the box set and later as a standalone. So it is unfortunately not the original mono mix, but it's the second best version because it has the really nice stereo up mix of the mono, because basically they took the mono mix and just slipped the score in stereo, and that's something they did throughout the LD era when they started doing remixes. So thankfully it's not the full-blown remix with new effects that we later got on DVD in the version that still is found on most editions today that Warner has put out. So if you're not going to have the original mono mix, the second best to go to is this home video era stereo remix, because it's a heck of a lot better than the earlier reprocessed for stereo fake stereo version. Then we move on to Magnum Force, and you'll see that they did at least add a little bit of color because the other sequels are all tinted slightly. So Magnum Force, with the same type of design, it goes for a brown aesthetic, and we get a similar, simple on the surface, but actually quite effective and actually quite attention-grabbing jacket, I think. I really do like this design. I don't know if they necessarily had to go for the black and white sort of aesthetic with the color tinting, but it actually does work. And being a longer film, we got 2 discs, which means we got a gatefold, and they did not disappoint with this gatefold because they use the still of Harry at the gun range, and it's across the entire jacket, so, and it even has the title on the bottom. So that is ridiculously impressive. And you could very easily just have this displayed hanging on the wall somehow if you figured out a way to display an open Laserdisc jacket sideways. Now, just like the first film, this is widescreen with digital PCM stereo, and it does seem to be, again, a port of the box set and widescreen disc that we got here in the US. And once again, if you can't get the original mono mix, your second best choice is having this Laserdisc era stereo remix, because it doesn't mess with the effects. It just simply adds the score in stereo and tries to make it a more stereo experience. So it's better than the reprocessed track from before, and it's better than the remix with new effects tracks that came afterwards. It's just a shame we still can't get the original mono mix that is locked to only the very first initial tape release. The Enforcer changes it up and goes for a blue aesthetic with a lovely original poster image there of Harry Callahan. This is a really nice looking jacket again, so I do like what they did here. The rear keeps with the same overall idea and theme, back down to just a single CLV disc, and again, this does seem to be a port of the US widescreen disc with the home video stereo remix that, again, once more, if you can't get the original mono mix, this is the second best version, and just basically getting it here in this Japanese box set with the spiffier custom jacket artwork. Then for Sudden Impact, we got, "Go ahead, make mine green." So they went for green, and it looks really impressive, even though it's odd seeing a Dirty Harry poster that's completely tinted green. But we have the same aesthetic again, and this does seem to be a port of what we got in the US widescreen box set, just with the fancy custom jacket. And then the Deadpool has a sort of light brown aesthetic to it. And of course, the Deadpool is the only film in the series that didn't get a widescreen Laserdisc transfer. It's always stuck as being open matted. So this has carried over here, unfortunately. And then we get the same design type for the rear, but it looks really nice and impressive. So basically, the big difference here you're getting with this box is you're getting all the fancy box set and artwork in terms of the overall packaging, and the nice custom jacket jackets for all the individual films. And compared to the US set, this definitely had a lot more put into it in terms of the overall design aesthetic. If you thought I was done talking about Japanese exclusive box sets with an open sort of slide the jacket in and out design, basically doing a Japanese box set version of releases we had here in the US, I am not, because I have one more, because he also sent me the equally difficult to find Japanese exclusive Die Hard Trilogy box set. This is like the Dirty Harry Collection, a specific Japanese market exclusive trilogy box, bringing together all three of the THX remastered discs from 1995 that we had here in the US. But we never got a box set, whereas in Japan, they got this lovely hard case set. It's got a very thick gloss finish on this, so it feels like a very premium release. And we have the open spine design again, so you can very easily slip out which discs you want. But the front just, it looks really nice. It's very simple, it's very straightforward, but the presentation quality and the very thick gloss on the hard box case is really impressive. Now when you look at the actual discs themselves, these are basically the same 1995 THX approved widescreen remasters we got for 1 and 2, plus Die Hard with a Vengeance, which came out at the same time, and they made the covers match. Here in Japan, though, they've done the release with the original poster artwork for each, which is really striking, because technically we never got the original poster for Die Hard across the entirety of an LD jacket. It was always the original widescreen release, and then it was the redone version for the THX reissue in 95. So this makes it a little bit more striking too. Plus, being Japanese, we get the 20th Century Fox logo in the corner, like they like to do a lot of studio logos. The gatefold is also quite nice, but like most Japanese discs, is in black and white. So we get cast and crew info, a lot of nice photos, but it is in black and white. The rear is also pretty good. It looks really nice. We've got Nakatomi Plaza on fire in the background. We've got our chapter stops. We've got our heroes and villains with nice printing on the photos used, and the typical Japanese black bar of information in the bottom. Now, in terms of the actual pressing, this is pretty much the Japanese version of the 1995 THX remaster. So if you've got that disc, you've pretty much already got this one. The difference is, of course, going to be this is the Japanese pressing with hard-coded subs and the custom packaging and box set, because we didn't get any of that in the US. However, we did get a DTS version, which I've always wanted to try and never gotten to, for all three films done simultaneously, which I don't think they got to the DTS in Japan either. So the box set versions here are also just AC3 and with a backup Dolby Surround on the PCM tracks. So this is pretty much just a fancy box set version of the standalone AC3 THX remasters of 1 and 2 plus Die Hard with a Vengeance that we got in the US, but in Japan, of course, they're going to make it into one heck of a spiffy box set. Then for Die Hard 2, again, the full usage of the original poster artwork sized, or essentially resized for the LD jacket, so it looks quite impressive, although, one wishes they would use the whole jacket and like we got for the US release, but maybe without all the extra banners we got on ours. But still, it looks really nice. Then we get another lovely gatefold, again black and white, but it looks lovely and great imagery throughout with the cast and crew list. So this just is another Japanese disc where the gatefold is black and white. And the rear, again, is quite impressive and looks nice, and in some ways looks nicer than the US AC3 disc. So I definitely think they had a great art team putting this together. Now, for Die Hard 2, it's just like Die Hard 1. This is pretty much the Japanese version of our AC3 THX widescreen remaster LD that we got here. So it's basically the same disc with hard-coded subtitles pretty much, and was, of course, pressed in Japan and had much spiffier artwork and packaging. Then you get to Die Hard with a Vengeance, which looks nice using the whole original poster, because, again, here in the US, on our THX version, we just got it zoomed and then had extra logos put over Bruce Willis's face. What's nice about this, even though it does use the same exact transfer, This disc does not have any potential rot issues because the US disc actually does have a very small amount of a rot report, and my own copy does have one spot that does actually hiccup in on one of the sides. Otherwise, it plays through fine, but my own personal copy does have a playback issue, and of course, you're not going to get that on the Japanese version. Otherwise, this is again the US master, but on a Japanese pressing with a really fancy gatefold that actually gives you the New York map of all the events and all of the Simon Says crimes, for example. So you actually get to follow along with the film with an actual map of New York, which I think is a brilliant touch and something that you don't get on the US release. And then the rear also looks really nice, and again is, I think, a bit better laid out even than the US release, which does have a lot of the mid to late 90s big Fox text with like a lot of colored balloons and things. But, it's a really nice looking jacket. The unfortunate part about this still reusing the US Master, Die Hard with a Vengeance is notorious for it being one of the most over-edge enhanced transfers you'll ever see in your life. This is even visible on the Laserdisc. It got worse when the DVDs came out, which used the same master, and it being DVD and component video made it much more obvious. So I really hate how this film looked on this first master because of the terrible edge enhancement. And thankfully, when the Blu-ray came around, they did do a new scan and got rid of all that, and I think the overall appearance is much better. But I do think the Laserdisc does tame some of that, so it's still a fine watch. But do keep in mind, you're going to see a lot of edge enhancement halos if that kind of thing bothers you, because this is just about the like one of the linchpin titles for most edge enhancements to death you're ever going to see in a transfer, because somebody went overboard on it. So this is again pretty much just a port of the AC3 US release. The one thing I wish they had done for this being a box set, you would think that maybe they would have just gone ahead and made these the DTS versions that were released here in the US as well, but they didn't. So that pretty much makes this just a beautiful box set and beautiful package for the AC3 release in Japan. And then last but certainly not least, he sent me one more box set that I just never thought I'd get to see or look at or review, simply because it is not common and it is getting on up there in the later days of Laserdisc, and we didn't even get a big fancy special edition LD box set of this film here when it was done by Warner Brothers. They had already switched over to DVD focus, and Laserdisc was sporadic, but they decided to just do the snapper case DVD and a limited edition big box with all this swag. So we didn't even get the fancy Laserdisc box set of Enter the Dragon here on the very spiffy, beautiful Japanese box set. And this was for the special edition cut, which was prepared and released around this time in the mid to late 1990s, specifically 1998. So this has the new updated version of the original poster artwork for the film's 25th anniversary. We have the obi strip around the top. There's a very, very thick gloss on this hard case box. It is a lift top, but it's got this beautiful thick gloss on it, so it feels really nice in your hands. We also get the custom logo on the spine. The obi goes onto the spine as well. And then the rear just has the logo with the dragon and then the Japanese information bar on the bottom. Now, this does pretty much match up with what the special edition turned up on DVD and all subsequent versions until the Criterion box set, which finally did a new scan and finally brought back the original mono mix. Starting with the special edition, because it was a new cut of the film that put back in a couple minutes of footage, they did remix the audio, and for the additional footage, they had to replace or actually put in a voice track because it was either missing or damaged. So on those particular moments, you will note that it is not Bruce Lee's own voice. That was something that was big about the Criterion Blu-ray box, because when they brought back the mono mix and restored it with Warner Brothers, it does seem like they actually were able to restore Bruce Lee's own voice to the mono mix for those couple minutes. But in the special edition, you don't get that, and you only get this 5.1 remix. While it's okay. I just don't like it, and I was so ecstatic that the Criterion set finally brought back the mono mix of this film, and because I'm a purist, but also I do think it sounds better. However, it's mono, and it's not as expansive as what they were able to do with this 5.1 remix, and at least this was still the late 90s when they tried to at least keep the fidelity of the original mix and the intent of the original mix in there somewhere. So this is a nice opening up of the film's audio, but it's not personally the way I sit down and watch it. But again, we didn't even get a fancy box here. They had already switched over, and we just got the snapper case DVD, which had some extras on the disc, but then all of the limited extras were only in the big black Warner Brothers limited edition DVD box, which they did for a number of their early DVDs that were very expensive and sold out very quickly, and merely just had the standard snapper case release tucked away inside the foam of the big box of swag. We did get a Laserdisc pressing of the Enter the Dragon special edition cut, but it was just the film only with the disc contents. So we didn't get a box set or anything fancy. That was simply saved and reserved for the DVD box. The film is spread across 2 discs in this lovely jacket, but it's not a gatefold like most late Warner releases, so do expect some damage and things. Thankfully, this doesn't have any corner crinkling. It's got a little tiny bit of wear, but still in really nice shape because it's protected by the box. The rear jacket looks really nice with great uses of imagery. The film basically is only on 2 sides, and side 3 actually gives us some on-disc extras in the form of vintage making-of pieces and Bruce Lee interviews, some of the ones that survived, and those have actually been encoded with PCM mono as well, because it's Laserdisc and they had a digital track, so they went ahead and did that anyway, which is nice of them. But unfortunately, we didn't get the documentary that was made around this time that also included a lot of the original Game of Death footage about Bruce Lee. That was included on the Warner DVD releases and then unfortunately dropped from their later Blu-rays and such. And we get a nice black and white insert with notes about Bruce Lee himself, which then goes into the chapter listings of the film, which are broken down into great detail and also have images from the specific moments. And if that weren't enough, this is the big Warner swag box set, remember. We got beautiful lobby card reproductions, but because I guess this was the Laserdisc edition, or I don't know, those DVD boxes were pretty big, so they may have had this same size. We actually got full-size lobby card reproductions, beautifully printed in color on nice cardstock. This is something you will never see again in a video release, of having somebody reproduce full-size lobby cards. If that were not enough, like all of these DVD box sets did, we even get an actual frame of one of the prints of the film with a digital scan printed reproduction. And nicely, this one is from the climax. So this is a really nice touch that you very rarely see happen anymore, but something that Warner Home Video was doing, and all of these early big DVD swag boxes, well, it made it here to the Japanese Enter the Dragon LD box. Then the rear has the information and is even numbered. We also got a fully printed book about the making of the film, exclusive to this release. It runs 50 pages, but is so full of lovely color imagery and nice text and vintage quotes and things that, it's quite more substantial than you'd think a 50-page booklet would be. Well, this is a 50-page book, not a booklet, and is really well done with tons of production information and stills as well. So it's far better than the sort of thin volume it looks like. This is one of those nice Laserdisc era type books. And to round everything off, they even included their new 1998 remaster of the Lalo Schifrin score on CD. So this is one of the LD boxes that includes the soundtrack CD. What's great about this, and really great for me, is unfortunately this was the last time anybody really worked on the score, and this is the last good release. and it's kind of gone out of print. So I was actually, because I was looking forward to the Arrow Bruce Lee set, I started thinking about the films again and started thinking, I've never owned a copy of the Enter the Dragon score. I'd love to get it. And outside of the original 1973 LP, there were some initial CD options, and then there's this one that was actually credited as being a remaster and actually having nice liner notes and things. And this is pretty much the same disc we got here in the US, but it actually has a nice booklet as well. So this was perfect timing for me because I had forgotten the Laserdisc box set actually included the soundtrack CD as well, and I believe the big DVD box of swag did too. So if you're like me and you were trying to just pick up a copy of the CD for not too much, if you want to plunk down for the Japanese Laserdisc box set, well, you can actually get the CD thrown in as well. So that was a really wonderful bonus because I was actually looking for this score when this mystery box arrived. So this was just a fantastic bonus of it being in here. So there you have the beautiful Enter the Dragon 25th Anniversary Special Edition box set that was only done in Japan. This is definitely one of those lovely, spiffy Warner Brothers Laserdisc box sets. It's just a shame that by this point they had switched over to looking at DVD and this box only came out in the Japanese market. So that does it for this particular update. Again, all thanks to Jason Koestner, who sent me another beautiful mystery box full of these amazing titles I never expected. So these are all things I've either wanted to check out for a long time or had on my wish list because I never thought I'd ever see them or actually look at them in person, and one or two that were complete surprises that I can't wait to dig into. So thanks to Jason and to everyone else. Please do keep continuing to enjoy the beautiful format of Laserdisc, and good luck with Laserdisc hunting because you never know what you find out in the wild. Just when things have dried up, all of a sudden you find a whole new bunch of discs or a new source, like a new store that's opened up, or somebody that carries LDs or has LDs in the store that you just were not aware of. So even when things dry up for a while, you occasionally find a new stash locally in the wild or get some luck with some eBay purchases and things. As always, I hope my babblings about Laserdisc and physical media formats has been at least somewhat fun and informative. Please do keep your players and discs spinning to help keep the joy of the Laserdisc format alive. And as always, thank you ever so much for watching.